What if a man who had spent 50 years in a forest walked into it one day and never walked out? Not because he was careless, not because he was unprepared, because he was a professional, because the forest was his workplace, because he knew every trail, every ridge, every stream crossing in the southwestern woods of Vermont better than most people know their own street. His name was Mitty Rivers. He was 74 years old. On November 12th, 1945, he led a party of 4 hunters into the woods near Hell Hollow Brook, close to the Long Trail in Glastenbury, Vermont. At some point in the afternoon, he moved ahead of the group, just slightly ahead, just far enough that they could no longer see him through the trees. He never came back. 300 people searched. Local residents and U.S. Army soldiers dispatched from Fort Devens in Massachusetts combed through the wilderness for 8 days. They found 1 rifle cartridge of the type Rivers used. No footprints past a certain point. No blood. No body. No sign of animal attack. The forest gave them 1 cartridge and nothing else. Mitty Rivers was never found. 1 year and 20 days later, on December 1st, 1946, an 18-year-old student named Paula Jean Welden walked into the same wilderness and did not return. She was a sophomore at Bennington College, an art and literature school 15 miles from Glastenbury Mountain. She was from Stamford, Connecticut. She was wearing a bright red jacket, jeans, and light sneakers, clothing unsuited for a December hike in Vermont. She carried no camping gear, no map, no food for an extended trip. The sun would set in less than 2 hours. An elderly couple was hiking approximately 100 yards behind her on the long trail. They watched her. She was moving steadily northward. She turned a corner in the trail ahead of them. They rounded the same corner, expecting to see her. She was not there. The trail was clear. There were no turnoffs, no side paths wide enough for a person to have taken without being visible. No place to go that would take her out of sight in the distance between their rounding the corner and the point where she should have been. The Vermont State Police did not exist. Vermont had no coordinated statewide search response. The investigation was fragmented, underfunded, and failed completely. Paula Welden's disappearance directly caused the Vermont legislature to create the Vermont State Police the following year. 2 people, the same mountain, 13 months apart. On December 1st, 1949, exactly 3 years to the day that Paula Jean Welden disappeared, a 68-year-old World War I veteran named James Tedford boarded a bus in St. Albans, Vermont. He was a resident of the Bennington Soldiers' Home. He had been visiting relatives. He was returning home on a public bus. He was one of 14 passengers on the bus at the last stop before Bennington. Witnesses confirmed he was in his seat. Some said he was sleeping. When the bus arrived in Bennington, Tedford was not on it. His belongings were still in the luggage rack. An open bus timetable was resting on his vacant seat. The other 13 passengers reported nothing unusual. No stops were made between the last confirmed sighting and Bennington. No one saw him get up. No one heard anything. No one saw him leave. A man vanished from a vehicle in the presence of 13 other people. None of them witnessed it. The bus driver later reported that a man matching Tedford's description may have disembarked in the village of Brandon, approximately 70 miles north of Bennington. Tedford's family stated he was despondent about returning to the soldiers' home. Brandon police investigated. The identification was never confirmed. James Tedford was never found. 10 months later, October 12, 1950, 8-year-old Paul Jepson. His mother left him in the cab of a pickup truck while she tended to the pigs at the family farm. She was not gone long. When she returned, Paul was gone. He was wearing a bright red jacket, the same color Paula Jean Welden had been wearing 4 years earlier. A bloodhound was brought in. It tracked Paul's scent to a crossroads, where it faded completely. Not diminished, not diverted. Gone. At the intersection of 2 roads, in open daylight, the scent of an 8-year-old boy simply stopped existing. Paul Jepson was never found. 16 days after Paul Jepson disappeared, on October 28, 1950, a 53-year-old woman named Frida Langer went missing near the Somerset Reservoir. She was an experienced hiker. She knew the area. She was camping with her husband and cousin, Herbert Elsner, near the reservoir. Familiar terrain, a short walk from the campsite. She and Herbert were hiking together when she slipped and fell into a stream, soaking her clothes and boots. She told Herbert to wait. She was going back to camp to change. The campsite was within sight. She turned and walked toward it. She never arrived. 400 people searched in the following weeks. Police, volunteers, firefighters, soldiers, and aircraft covered the area around the Somerset Reservoir and the surrounding forest. 5 separate search teams. They found nothing. On May 12, 1951, 6 months after she disappeared, Frida Langer's body was found. It was found in an area that had already been searched, multiple times, by those 400 people. Her body turned up in some tall grasses in an area that had been searched extensively a number of times, making it unlikely that the search teams had simply missed her. Whether she was there and was missed, or whether she was not there when they searched, has never been determined. Because of the condition of the body, after 6 months of Vermont winter, the coroner could not determine cause of death. No injuries identified, no signs of violence, no explanation offered. 5 disappearances, 5 years, 1 body. No cause of death, no suspects, no convictions. Before anyone disappeared, Glastenbury Mountain had a history that people in this part of Vermont already knew. Glastenbury and its neighboring township of Somerset were once moderately thriving logging and industrial towns. They declined toward the late 19th century and were unincorporated by the Vermont legislature in 1937. Medium, ghost towns. The forest reclaimed them. Today, the area is over 95% protected public land, Green Mountain National Forest. Remote, even by Vermont standards. The Abenaki people, indigenous to this region for centuries before any of this, had a specific relationship with Glastenbury Mountain. The Abenaki tribe believed that Glastenbury Mountain was cursed, as it housed their dead at its base. They did not camp there. They did not hunt there. Their oral tradition treated the mountain as a place that required distance. This is documented. It is not invented in retrospect. The Abenaki understanding of this mountain predates every disappearance by centuries. In 1992, Vermont author Joseph Citro coined the phrase Bennington Triangle during a public radio broadcast. Before that, the 5 disappearances were largely treated as unconnected local tragedies. The naming of the pattern changed how the pattern was perceived and how aggressively it was searched for historical precedents. Citro himself has grown weary of the phenomenon. He turns down most interview requests. He doesn't watch the YouTube videos. When asked about it recently, he said, "If you take away the monster stories, the curse stories, the UFO stories, you are still left with the vanishings. Those are real. Those are history. The long trail still passes through this area. Over 95% of Glastenbury is now protected public land in the Green Mountain National Forest. People hike it every year. Most of them have never heard the names. There are 4 serious theories. Each of them accounts for some of what happened. None of them accounts for all of it. The first is serial killer, a single predator operating in the Glastenbury area between 1945 and 1950, who was never identified, never caught, and never named. The geographic and temporal clustering is consistent with a predator in a defined territory. The counter-argument: serial killers select consistent victim types. These 5 victims ranged from 8 years old to 74. 2 were men, 3 were women. The circumstances were wildly different. A hunter, a college student, a bus passenger, a child in a truck, a hiker who slipped in a stream. No consistent predator profile fits all 5. The second is wilderness accident, that 5 people died of exposure, falls, or misadventure in one of the most remote and unforgiving wilderness environments in the northeastern United States, and their remains were consumed by the forest, the animals, and the Vermont winters. This is what most local historians prefer. It requires no pattern. It is consistent with the terrain. The counter-argument: James Tedford did not vanish in a forest. He vanished on a bus, in the presence of 13 witnesses. The third theory is that these cases are unconnected. That Bennington Triangle is a name applied retrospectively to an unrelated cluster of events in a region where wilderness disappearances are statistically unremarkable. Bennington author Tyler Resch has said directly, "These stories are not connected. It is just a vast territory. I am only surprised there have not been more disappearances." The fourth is that there is something specific about this location that has not been identified. Not supernatural, specific. A geographic feature, an atmospheric condition, a convergence of trail, terrain, and exposure that consistently creates situations from which people cannot recover. The Abenaki avoidance of this mountain for centuries before any documented disappearance is either a coincidence or it is the oldest available data point. None of these theories explains why a bloodhound tracked an 8-year-old boy to a crossroads and then had nothing. That specific detail has no theory, no explanation. It sits in the documented record of this case and refuses every framework. Paula Jean Welden deserves more than she usually gets. She was 18 years old. She was studying at Bennington College, an experimental art school that drew students who were curious, independent, and unafraid of being alone with their own thoughts. She was from a successful Connecticut family. Her father was an industrial designer. She was, by all accounts that survive, fully and completely alive in the way that 18-year-olds are when they do not yet know that disappearing is possible. On December 1st, 1946, she told her roommate she was going hiking. She drove herself to the Long Trail trailhead near Glastenbury Mountain. She was wearing a red jacket, jeans, and light sneakers. She did not take enough food or gear for an extended hike. The sun would set in less than 2 hours. A local man gave her a ride from the college to Route 9. A Bennington Banner employee gave her directions on the trail. An elderly couple was hiking approximately 100 yards behind her. They watched her move steadily northward on the long trail. They watched her turn a corner. When they rounded the same corner, expecting to see her, because the trail was clear and there was nowhere to go, she was not there. Ernest Whitman gave a statement to police. He said, in his own words, that she simply was not there when she should have been. He had no explanation. He was a witness to an absence. Paula's father, William Welden, moved to Bennington after she disappeared. He organized searches. He offered money. He spoke to newspapers for months. He did everything a father can do. He found nothing. Eventually, he left Bennington. He never came back. Paula Jean Welden's disappearance was the inspiration for Shirley Jackson's 1951 novel, Hangs a Man. It has been the subject of podcasts, documentaries, and YouTube investigations for decades. Her cold case file with the Vermont State Police remains open. Nobody has been charged. Nobody has been named. The trail where she was last seen is part of the Long Trail, one of the oldest long-distance hiking trails in the United States. It passes through Glastenbury Mountain. People walked it last weekend. Some of them walked the exact section where she turned a corner and was not there. Some of them did not know her name. Subscribe to Dark Pages. Every case on this channel is documented. Every source is in the description below. And some trails still hold what they took. This was Dark Pages.